So now we're going to move into a discussion about symbolism. And people often ask, oh, did the author actually mean for this thing to, mean all these abstract ideas? And the answer is yes. Authors have a lot of time to think about how they want to structure their story. And so they put symbols into the text in order to allude to these bigger ideas in an easier way. The first type of symbols that we're going to talk about are objects. And so when you see some sort of object poking up throughout a literary work, it probably means something. And it usually doesn't mean just one thing. And it's really situation dependent. And so the type of symbol really depends on the context of the work. So, for example, the Mississippi River in Huckleberry Finn represents this path to freedom, for the slave who's trying to escape to the north. But it also represents how nature can be powerful and unforgiving, and it can cause a lot of damage to your life. So beyond objects, you have certain markings or situations that can represent some different things. And so if you take a look at the eagle up there in the left, flight tends to represent freedom and largeness of spirit, or even love. I felt like I was soaring through the stars. When it goes wrong, though, it can mean this danger that you can't escape from, a feeling of helplessness as gravity brings you crashing to the ground. You take a look at Harry Potter there. There's a reason why J.K. Rowling chose to put that scar on Harry, and oftentimes these physical markings serve to kind of flag important characters. Something that comes up throughout literature is this idea of blindness, meaning atonement and guilt and grief. Without being able to see the world around you normally, you start to get a shift in your perspective. Another kind of physical marking is disease, and it can represent people wasting away due to circumstances that are outside of their control. And something to remember about disease is that authors usually choose socially controversial diseases. So syphilis tends to mark people who are, romantically dishonest towards people. And recently HIV/AIDS has been very important in literature. Or heart disease, that's kind of a metaphor for, losing love, or somebody has a cold heart. And then you have this idea of violence, where take a look at Luke and Darth Vader down there. It's not just about those two characters fighting each other, but the violence can represent larger struggles. So in that case, it's this idea of the dark side versus the light side. Or it can be a little bit more subtle. So in this poem called Out, Out, Robert Frost depicts a man losing his hand to a buzzsaw. And that's not talking about the unsafe farm machinery, but what he's trying to get at is this violent and unpredictable relationship that humans have with others. And so one of the most obvious symbol categories is this idea of the different seasons having different meanings. So we have spring, that means youth, vitality, hope, and rebirth. Summer means love, fulfillment, and adulthood. Autumn can mean like the onset of age and decline, and harvesting what you sowed in the summertime. And then winter tends to represent old age, like resentment of what happened, death, and bitterness. So the last things that I want to talk about are politics and irony. So it's important to remember that writings are political, even if it's subtle and not overtly stated. It's important to have some idea of the political situation that was going on when the book was written, because it can lead to a better understanding of the piece of literature. And so a great example of this is Edgar Allan Poe's Fall of the House of Usher. And so in this classic novel, this guy goes up to this old mansion that's kind of creepy and falling apart, and he discovers this awful incestuous relationship that this noble is having, that's happening among the family. And this alludes to the degradation of European monarchies at the time. And knowing about that political situation allows you to better understand the short story as it was written, and not just see it as some creepy situation that happened. And another idea that I want to talk about is irony. And this is when all the stuff that we've talked about is kind of used in the opposite way. And this is really common in modern and postmodern literature. So, for example, T.S. Eliot wrote about how spring is just a continuation of despair that doesn't bring any relief in his epic poem, The Wasteland. And this is in contrast to what we just talked about, where spring is kind of the symbol of rebirth and growth and kind of goodness and the beginning of life. But he just says, April is the cruelest month. So thanks for watching this screencast. Remember, themes in literature reverberate and influence one another. No book is written without the influence of others, and learning about these whispers in other books can enhance one's appreciation of the work that they're reading. If you want to learn more about this, a great book to read is How to Read Literature Like a Professor by Thomas Foster. It's worth your time, and I think that you'd learn a lot by reading it.